How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys Alex and Ryan. So today we're talking about three free agents, lower cost but high production value the Yankees could look at to maybe help supplement, fill some spots that we need to solve. Obviously, center field's a position where we're looking at ourselves and saying, okay, Jason Dominguez, don't know when he's really going to be coming back. Even if he comes back in July, gets fully healthy, you still have to assume that he's going to need some time to ramp up in AAA. So you're looking at maybe an August return realistically for Jason Dominguez. Now, same thing at third base. What's going on at third base? Is it DJ LeMahieu's job to lose? Is it Oswald Peraza's job to lose? Or is there a free agent available the Yankees may be able to get at a relatively cheap price point, or at least a fair price point, that can play at a good level and offer some veteran leadership there? And then, of course, you can never have enough pitching. So we have three guys in mind Ryan has done some pretty significant breakdowns on and is going to give you a lot of information on these players and why they could be good fits, and some of them we've discussed before. And there's a new one in there that we want to mention. So Ryan, before we dive into the good stuff, how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing well, a little, getting a little hit by some allergies and all that stuff, but we power through it. I think it'd be fun to get started with a guy that I don't think we've talked about on this channel. Like, we've talked about two of the other guys on this list, and I've definitely spoke about both of them extensively, not just, in the offseason, but one of them actually frequently at the deadline. The guy that I think, not enough people are talking about is Seth Lugo. Now, Seth Lugo, if you're a New York Yankee fan, you might remember him with the New York Mets, and initially you're like, this is a guy who you remember as a reliever, and he was a reliever for the majority of his career, at least when he was successful, but he went to sign with the San Diego Padres. So if you're interested in guys who went from the NL East to the San Diego Padres, Seth Lugo is right up your alley. But look, Seth Lugo put up an 86 ERA minus, which means he was 14% better than the league average at run prevention. For San Diego, that's a 3.57 ERA, and he had a 3.83 FIP in his first season being a starting pitcher in a while. Now, he struck out 23.2% of batters faced, he had a relatively low walk rate, and he had a 45.2% ground ball rate. So he had pretty good results on the field, and I think there's a little bit more to unlock here. He has two really good fastballs in his four-seamer and sinker. Now, in terms of stuff plus, they grade out as below average, but his location on them is excellent, and it allows them to be plus pitches. He ranked in the 97th percentile in fastball run value, and both of them have solid velocity and movement profiles, so I really do like both those pitches, but his curveball was a little bit disappointing this year, and the reason for that is because curveballs from right-handed pitchers tend to play a little bit worse against right-handed hitters. Vertical movement doesn't work as well from righties. They see that a lot better from the right-handed side. The thing that always and has traditionally worked for a very long time, this isn't an analytical or new concept, is horizontal movement, right? You think sliders, sweepers, those type of pitches. Right-handed pitchers have been able to get a lot of success against right-handed hitters in that regard, and Lugo actually developed a sweeper that graded out pretty well in stuff plus, and had some really good results. Now, in the stretch of his final 8 starts where he really dialed up the usage, he had a 2.39 ERA in those outings, and quite frankly, the Yankees are one of the, if not the premier organization to develop sweepers with. I think Seth Lugo would take another step forward with that pitch, and he's not supposed to get a lot of money, right? He could be your 5-starter, he's a veteran, you're not expecting him necessarily to be, Game 2 or Game 3 starter, though, baseball's weird. I mean, we just saw Andrew Heaney start a World Series game, so you never really know. But Seth Lugo has experience in the bullpen and has pitched really well there. So, Alex, if you're thinking about it in a postseason setting, and I know that that's getting ahead of ourselves, the New York Yankees did not make the playoffs this past season, so we can't sit here and assume such an outcome. But if you are playing for the regular and postseason, if you do make it, Seth Lugo has been a really good reliever in the past. That's the type of pitch mix that does work well in that role. So, you could, push him into a multi-inning relief role and have your, top 4 starters be starters in the postseason. He has pitches that work to the left and right side. He's a command first guy and a veteran. So that's the type of profile that really works well for the 5th starter spot. And again, you're just looking for cheap stability in your rotation. It doesn't preclude you from going out and signing a bigger name. A guy that could interest you is like maybe a Jordan Montgomery. You can make a reunion there. Obviously, Yoshinobu Yamamoto sits at the top of the market. But again, like, the Yankees need stability in the rotation. It's not a lack of talent, right? Like, Carlos Rodon is ridiculously talented. Nestor Cortez is ridiculously talented. Michael King is ridiculously talented. But they've struggled to keep guys healthy, and that's really their big thing. They just need reliable innings, and I think Seth Lugo can give them that at a pretty low cost.
I mean, look, getting more pitching is never a bad thing, and especially guys that are not going to cost you an arm and a leg. I kind of feel as though the Yankees like to do this. They like to go out and find those kind of value pieces, and I do feel like, Ryan, that we may lean on some prospects, but again, he just pitched 146 innings this past year with San Diego at a 3.57 ERA. Like, I'll question this. Do you think that the Yankees it would be either or, Seth Lugo or Frankie Montas? Do you think they could bring back both and go get a guy like Yamamoto? I don't think so. How much do you think he actually gets on the open market? He gets, $7.5 million per year on a 2-year, $15 million deal. So maybe he's looking for a bit more than that now, but he's 33 years old. I don't know if he's going to get it. Maybe you can get him for the similar price as you pay Montas, and he's coming off a good year, 146 innings. What do you think about the prospect of signing Lugo there to a similar deal to Montas?
Yeah, I think the years that you commit him to, you'd probably have to commit to 2 to 3 years, maybe 2 years and like a player or incentive based or club option, whatever it may be. But yeah, you would feel safer with Seth Lugo over Frankie Montas. Now, upside-wise, this isn't the conversation, right? Like, Frankie Montas has way more upside than Seth Lugo, but you could also make the argument, why not both? Like, you could realistically sign both, and, you have a lot of depth in your rotation. One of the guys that you view as back-end pitchers, which would be Seth Lugo in this case, could always transition to the bullpen if it calls for it. The way I look at it, and you mentioned this, and I think that's such a good point because the Yankees displayed this last year, right? You can never have too much pitching. The Yankees walked into last season with Garrett Cole, Frankie Montas, Nestor Cortez, Luis Severino, Carlos Rodon, Domingo Germán, and Clark Schmidt. Alex, only 2 of those guys made it through the entire season without getting hurt, and multiple of those guys were out for extended periods of time. Like, yeah, technically speaking, Carlos Rodon was there on the last game of the season, but he was inactive for most of the year, right? Nestor Cortez wasn't on the active roster for the final series of the year. Neither was Luis Severino. Neither was Domingo Germán, right? Like, these things happen, right? Like, baseball, life, things happen. Guys get hurt like this. How many times have you seen a player that, that has had, a pretty decent bill of health get hurt, right? Sandy Alcantara was considered the workhorse, the premier workhorse of baseball, a throwback into when pitchers were throwing 230 innings, going out there trying to complete games, and he's undergoing season-ending Tommy John surgery, and he won't pitch in 2024. So you're injury prone until you're not, you're healthy until you're not, right? Like, these are variables, especially when it comes to pitching. We're talking about the UCL, we're talking about the shoulder, we're talking about the labrum, all that stuff that is super fickle. You never know who gets hurt. You never know who stays healthy. I'm going to use the Texas Rangers as an example here, but Alex, if you said that the Texas Rangers on the start of the 2023 season would roster Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom, Jordan Montgomery, Nathan Eovaldi, and Andrew Heaney, you'd be like, all right, they would win the World Series because of deGrom and Scherzer. Well, that's not what happened. Neither of them were healthy or active on the final game of the World Series. So, you never know what happens in baseball. You never really know. So I think the Yankees need to be prepared for any and all situations, including and especially injuries.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the outfield for a second here. This is a guy that we have talked about a couple times over the past few weeks. This is Kevin Kiermaier. If the Yankees want to go out and get a nice supplemental piece to fill center field and really any of the outfield positions, with a guy with a lefty bat who could exercise that power in the short right porch in Yankee Stadium, Kevin Kiermaier is a really, really efficient, good option for the Yankees. He's going to cost you maybe not $10 million on a 1-year deal. Short term, 33 years old. He stole 14 bases this past season, had 8 homers, 36 RBIs, at 265 with a 322 OBP. Was 4% better offensively than the average player at 104 WRC plus. 21.1% strikeout rate, 7.1% walk rate. 419 slugging. Like, this is a decent player, and that's just his offense. The guy's defense, you could actually argue that he's a better defensive player than Harrison Bader. If you look at his actual advanced metrics, he had 16 defensive runs saved last season and 13 outs above average. It's better than Harrison Bader. And to be quite frank, he also played a good amount of games. I think he played 129 games. So he's had some injury issues in the past, but the Yankees only need him until Dominguez gets back, and there's going to be issues. There's going to be injuries. He's going to be valuable, right? And $10 million for an outfielder that has excellent, and I'm not just saying that lightly, excellent defensive measures and traits and attributes and statistics, and he's a decent enough bat in the lineup, and he's a lefty, it adds some diversity. I feel like it's a match made in heaven if you're the Yankees. You pay him 1 year, you're one and done, and you can get so much value out of a player like this. Ryan, I know you're a fan of this kind of concept of getting Kiermaier. I don't think it impacts the probability of getting Juan Soto at all. In fact, I think it just reinforces an outfield that has suffered significant injuries, ranging from, of course, Stanton to Judge last year. You need to have insurance policies in place, and that allows Everson Pereira to gradually improve. It allows some of these younger guys to just kind of get involved. and it's not going to cost you that much, and you can get rid of the contract after 1 year. It's done. Maybe you have a club option for a second year if the Yankees want to play that game. But what are your thoughts on Kevin Kiermaier? I think it's a really great fit. If they're willing to spend 10 mil on a 1 year deal, I don't see why they wouldn't make this deal.
Yeah, Kevin Kiermaier, look, people say he's just Harrison Bader. Yeah, if Harrison Bader could hit right-handed pitching, he'd still be a Yankee. Like, I don't know if people understand this, but Kevin Kiermaier is left-handed, right? Like, Kevin Kiermaier hits right-handed pitching better than left-handed pitching. He has a career 103 WRC plus versus right-handed pitching. The Yankees can hit left-handed pitching. The Yankees can figure out what center field's going to look like when there's a lefty on the mound. The Yankees had a 114 WRC plus against lefties. That was the sixth best mark in all of baseball last season. That's crazy to say because that offense was not very good for most of the year, but it was right-handed pitching. They had a bottom 5 OPS against right-handed pitching. You take any offense you can get from that position against right-handed pitching. And look, what are the Yankees' other options, right? Like, yeah, you can go out and sign Cody Bellinger, but and Sam and I actually, we did a mailbag episode recently that should be coming out tomorrow, but we talked a little bit about the Bellinger-Soto thing. What if they got both? And look, I mean, what do you do then, right? Like, what do you do with Dominguez, right? You kind of you have to force yourself to trade Dominguez, or you have to force yourself. You can't even say, well, you can just DH one of them. Sure, you could hypothetically just DH Dominguez, right? But what's Dominguez's value if he's just a full-time DH, right? And again, you can't really ever turn Bellinger into a fourth outfielder because you'd be investing too much money there. This isn't to say that the Yankees shouldn't get Cody Bellinger and Juan Soto because there's a hypothetical world where Stanton is good and Dominguez is healthy and the two can't play together. But my point more so is that Kevin Kiermaier comes with very little financial commitment. You don't have to, extend him for 6, 7, 8 years. But what you can do is you can have Kiermaier and justifiably have him as a fourth outfielder. There are going to be games and there are going to be situations where you're going to need Kevin Kiermaier to play a lot more than you maybe would have liked to have him play, even when Dominguez comes back. And you want to have that outfield modality. Look, Kevin Kiermaier being able to play center field allows the Yankees to do a couple of things. It allows the Yankees to play Dominguez in left field, and most importantly, it allows the Yankees to rotate Judge or Stanton or Soto in the right field and DH spots, depending on who's healthy and who's playing well. And again, you just want to have options, right? And Kevin Kiermaier gives you options without making a long-term commitment. And of course, as you mentioned, he is a platinum glove defender out there. Really good speed, stole 14 bases in 15 attempts. If he's your 8th or 9th hitter, how can you complain about, a 95 to 100 WRC plus with above average offense against right-handed pitching? I think if you're complaining about that, then we're going a little too far. The Yankees no longer have a black hole at catcher, right? Like, that used to be the issue, right? Where it's like you couldn't really take on more defense-first players because your catching position was not going to hit very much. Now you expect your catching position to hit, and you expect them to hit righties and lefties. So, Alex, I think they can stomach a defense-first guy who hits right-handed pitching. Again, the thing that they really struggled with was right-handed pitching. So I don't really see an issue with Kiermaier. It's not going to cost a lot, and he's probably, a 2 to 3 WAR player. That's a pretty good player to have on your team.
Yeah, I would argue that's a fine player to have on our team. Now, the next guy, interesting player, Jeimer Candelario. I know you were a fan of his at the trade deadline. 29 years old, switch hitting bat. This is a fine player, right? He hit 251, 336 OBP, 471 slugging this past season with 22 homers, guys. This guy has some power. 70 RBIs, 22% strikeout rate, 9.2% walk rate, and a 117 WRC plus. He's a career slightly above average hitter, but he was well above average, 17% better this past season with two teams, really. What was he with? He was with the Washington Nationals and the Chicago Cubs. So, his numbers with the Nationals were pretty solid, and then, obviously moves over to the Cubs, and it's a quick transition trying to help them make the postseason. And then as a defensive asset, he's good enough. Like, he's a fine player defensively. Is he going to be like a Gold Glove? Maybe not. He's 994 innings this past season, 971 fielding percentage at the hot corner with -5 defensive runs saved and 2 outs above average. So no matter how you look at it, he's a fine defender. He's not going to be a liability, I would say. For Candelario, the question is, how much are you willing to spend on him? Because I'm not exactly sure what his market value is going to be. Ryan, you may have a better concept on what that may look like. I don't think he's going to be like a $20 million per season player, but maybe $15 million. I don't know. What are you thinking about that? Is there a number that you'd say, I'm okay with the Yankees reaching this number, but anything more than this, I think would be a little bit too much?
Yeah, so the two comparisons I want to look at are the Eduardo Escobar contract and the Brandon Drury contract, because both players were, infielders at second base, actually, for Drury a little bit, but, they were both infielders who signed contracts following a pretty strong season. They signed them pretty recently, too, and Escobar, I believe, got a 3-year, $30 million deal. I can double check right now. No, it's 2 years, $20 million with a third-year option that was $9 million, so overall, it was 3 years, $39 million. That third year not guaranteed. And look, I don't think that, Candelario is going to settle for just like $39 million over 3 years. But another example, like the Brandon Drury one, was 2 years, $17.5 million. So maybe we are looking at a guy who won't get a ton of money on the open market. I don't think he's going to get like nothing. I think he'll still get, I'd probably assume right around that like $10 to $15 million range. But if it's $45 million over 3 years, I think that's more than fine. And look, Candelario plays some first base too. He actually played a decent amount of first base with the Chicago Cubs this past season. And he's got some, that's some versatility you can use. We talked about, maybe the appeal with Bellinger is that he can play a little bit of first base. I think that appeal exists also for Candelario. And, the bat, right? Like the bat is pretty good. He's been a pretty good hitter for 3 of the last 4 seasons. He's been a pretty good hitter. His 2023 and 2021 seasons were very similar in terms of swing decisions, batted ball sprays, all that stuff. He didn't hit the ball as hard as he did in 2021 as he did in 2023. Like the quality of contact has regressed a little bit, and that can be concerning, but that's why you're giving him like $14 or $13 million and not like, $20 or $25 million. And look, he's a switch hitter. The Yankees need some help in that department. I do trust Oswald Peraza and DJ LeMahieu as a tandem enough to at least get me through the deadline. But, if the Yankees want to be aggressive and say, let's try to move Peraza for an outfielder, or, we're going to, maybe there's an opportunity that opens up with Glaber, although I would suggest against that because the Yankees really need the offense. Candelario's a nice, just like cheap, solid, switch hitter, reliable, does the job. I think solid is just the best way to describe him. He isn't like bad at anything offensively. He hits the ball hard enough. He makes enough contact. He doesn't chase too much. He doesn't whiff enough. He swings a lot in zone. He doesn't do anything like bad, right? So he does so much at a solid rate that it makes him a good hitter. And you think about that short portion right field, he pulls a decent amount of his barrels and fly balls. I think he'll benefit a little bit from that. And again, like he'd hit like 5th or 6th on the team, and that's a really good 5th and 6th hitter to have. The problem with the Yankees is that they've this past season at the very least, in 2022 they did a better job at this. They've struggled to have their 1 through 9 look really good. It's usually just been like the 2 and the 3 or the 2 and the 4, right? Now they can have a lineup that like 1 through 9 is a lot deeper. Let's say you have Kiermaier hitting 8th, right? And you have like, Candelario hitting 5th, right? And like that lineup gets deeper. That lineup has a lot more consistency and quality and just guys who are going to go out there and put up some good at-bats in most situations. And that's really what I think this team is looking for. They have their superstar in Aaron Judge, right? If they want to go out and get another superstar in Juan Soto, which they absolutely should, that just makes them that much better. They already have a superstar starting pitcher in Garrett Cole. It's just that the supporting cast around those two, pillars of the organization haven't been there. And pieces like this give them that advantage. And again, they should make a big move. They shouldn't just go out and say, all right, Kiermaier, Lugo, and Candelario, that's a good enough offseason. But looking at 1 or 2 of these guys and picking them up alongside of making a big move, that's what I think makes for a fully enriching offseason that covers a lot of your holes on the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think that these players certainly offer solutions in some respects. So we'll see what the Yankees do. We'll see where they want to put their money. And, we're hearing reports now, of course, the Yankees are going to make a strong push at Shohei Ohtani reports. And, we got you guys covered there. And we'll talk about the realism of that. And right now, I don't think that's realistic. I think every team is going to do their due diligence on Ohtani. I just don't think the Yankees are the ones that are going to be willing to spend on him. I think they may want to go after like a Soto and a Yamamoto combination alternatively. But I do think they're going to spend. I think they're going to be aggressive. I just think they might want to get 2 players at 25 years old instead of 1 that is going to miss the entire 2024 season pitching. So that's where I say to myself, they want instant results. And I think that, yes, Ohtani long-term is an absolute monster. He has had some years where he's been a little bit injury prone. But I'm definitely excited to see what the Yankees do to improve this roster because God knows we need it. But guys, love to hear your perspective below in the YouTube comments. Make sure to like and subscribe as always. And I'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.